Joining me now, first-class father Matt Roloff. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Well, thank you, Alex, for having me.
All right, let's start here. How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
I've got 4 kids, and let's see, I've got my oldest are twins, and so they're going to be 27 years old, both fathers themselves, and then I have a daughter who's 25, Molly, and then my youngest, Jacob, is 22.
Okay, very cool. What type of sports or activities were they all into growing up?
Well, they're pretty much all into soccer. I was a wrestler in high school, so I tried to get them all all the boys at least into wrestling at a young age. But they all did it for one season. I thought they were all destined to be champion wrestlers, but they decided that soccer was more interesting to them, so they switched to soccer, and I flowed with that.
Yeah, that soccer's become popular. My kids gravitated to that early on, and I never really knew much about the game, but that sport has definitely taken over for sure.
Yep, no doubt about that.
All right, Matt, please, just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Let's see. I started off I was a computer programmer, and after high school, I was a computer programmer, and then went into computer sales, software sales, worked for some large companies all over the world, really, and then somewhere along the line, I got into farming, and so now I'm a pumpkin farmer. I grow pumpkins, and we have a television show that we do called Little People Big World. So when that's not keeping me busy, I'm busy maintaining the farm, and I have a number of other little businesses. I sell accessibility kits into hotels and various other products into grocery stores. I actually have a children's book. I know you're a big avid reader to your kids, so I've built a little book called Little Lucy Big Race for kids to read, and so I've kind of into all kinds of different things.
Yeah, you've had an amazing journey, Matt. And when did fatherhood come into this picture for you? How old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a dad kind of change your perspective on life?
Well, let's see, I got married, I was 24, and then, let's see, it probably was a year and a half. It wasn't much longer, my wife at the time, Amy, got pregnant with the twins, so I must have been about 25. I'm guessing I'd have to go back through the math, but probably about 25 years old when I had the twin boys, and, it was a radical change. I mean, I had to, you really go from sort of being more self-centered and everything's about, my career and that, to really being the custodial of, precious little lives, and the responsibility is quite stunning, and so when you make that first step off, especially in my case where we had 2 of them, and, one of them was a little person like myself, and one of them was average size. So my wife and I at the time were little people. We had dwarfism, and one of our twins had dwarfism. And then the other one was a perfectly average, I guess we used the word normal, or we couldn't use the word, kid. And so we had our hands full back in the days. And Amy was very small, so she had to, carry these kids first inside of her. And that was quite a feat, physical accomplishment. And then after they were born, between the 2 of us having to, let the kids around and get all the diapers changed, it really did. It revolutionized our perspective and our life, and it continues to do so today.
Yeah, well said. What was sort of the genesis of the whole Little People Big World? How did that all come about, and what were some of the challenges of being, on reality TV while being a dad?
Well, one of the things I have quite a little, my form of disability, or form of dwarfism, I should say, is pretty physically limiting. I'm on crutches and what have you. So there was going to be some sports and some activities that I wasn't going to be able to do with the kids, and I knew that it was going to be a little harder for me to be competitive with them on soccer. I mean, I could kind of swing my leg and kick a ball a little bit, which I did, but I did have sort of a creative bent to myself. So I set out when the kids were first born, the twins. In fact, they weren't even born yet when I said, one thing I can do very well is I can build stuff. And so, tree houses and go-karts and forts and things like that. So I set out in my, time after work, building very elaborate structures and what have you. And, sometimes I'd hire high school kids to help me. Sometimes I'd do a lot of it, on my hands and knees. And I built really cool playgrounds for the kids, and it triggered their imagination and helped me have a creative outlet, and that's what caught the attention of producers to develop the show Little People Big World. So the producers came along and said, this is pretty interesting that this guy that can barely walk, is building a pirate ship in his backyard, and that was the genesis of the Little People. So that's just kind of the Reader's Digest version of how the show started.
Yeah, very cool. And do you ever look back at any of the episodes and then learn a little something, like see something on the film that about yourself that you didn't necessarily like, and then you made a change or a correction after seeing it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that happens frequently, especially in the early days. I used to tell people everybody should have a video camera in the corner of their room and watch how they behave in certain circumstances, and you might grow up a little bit. And certainly it happened with us. We'd see things on the TV, and kind of be mortified at how we handled this particular situation and what have you. So, I don't like to say, the TV, process of being on TV changed me or anybody else, but there's no doubt that when you see yourself, we have, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of television that's been created over the last 14 years. Now I look at it and it's more of a cringe, than it is hide in the bedroom underneath the bed. More about that than it is. But there was the early days that definitely try to, learn about, do some self-reflection.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like pro sports athletes go through that when they have to go and watch the film. A lot of them want to hide in the closet while they're watching some of the things because the camera doesn't lie. One of the things now is the technology. So many people post stuff and it's all out there, so we all have kind of more access to everybody's individual lives. How have you handled any of that stuff? Like, how have you handled social media and technology and that type of stuff with your kids?
Well, that's been that's a great question. It's been quite a journey. We're still figuring it out. Probably the way I would respond to it and spend the time talking about it is having 4 kids, and they're kind of going through, the process of learning how to have thick skin, and people are going to, everything they do. I've had to sit the kids down and say, you guys, everything you do and you say on your social media is going to get scrutinized and picked apart and yelled at. So that's a tough way to grow up, especially for our youngest, Jacob. He was very young and didn't have all the tools in place. And so we spent a lot of time coaching the kids to, be super careful about, what you say and what you do and your actions, because you're going to get, you're going to be remembered by some of this stuff. And, there's big rewards that come with being in the reality TV business, but there's also, challenges, and that's one of them right there. So I've been an adult, during the whole filming process, so I was able to, and pretty thick skin, I've been teased my entire life, one way or another, stared at and looked at, and, because of my, stature. So it wasn't a big stretch to go from being ridiculed and what have you. But, people, there's most of the time people are wonderful. There's what I call the 1%. I have a thing in our family, we call it the 1%. And 1% means it might be a little more than 1%, but that's the segment of society that's just always going to be mean and ornery, and they're sour and they're jealous and they aren't feeling good about themselves or insecure. And we can't fix everybody. It's the people that you can reach and that you can teach and you can influence. Those are the ones that matter. And the 1% that are just going to be mean and ornery no matter what you do. You just have to let that roll off your back and not get you down.
Yeah, very well said. That's an awesome way to approach it. What about, how about disciplining the kids, Matt? Has them being sort of famous with the reality TV and very well recognized, has that made it any more complicated to discipline the kids? How do you kind of handle discipline as a father?
Unbelievably more complicated. We could spend a whole podcast on that one. It's very difficult. For one, it's challenging to try to discipline your kids and yell at them when the cameras are rolling. So, which was considerably amount of time. So my kids would learn how to do things that, you know, would stimulate the drama of the show, you know, just naturally. The producers are whispering in their ear, hey, go kick your dad in the shin, or don't take that, you know, dinner plate back to the table so that your dad can get mad. We want to see what that looks like. So, you know, there's some of that kind of stuff that's going on. And so I would, for example, not know the difference between is one of my kids doing it just to do a wink at one of the producers, or is he really being defiant? And, you know, being a little person to start with is difficult. Think about disciplining when your 6-year-old is, you know, a head taller than you. You know, that's something to think about, right? And so I had to just try my best to, you know, be creative and you know, discipline from a perspective of respect. Make sure that they understood that when I was serious, I was serious. You know, we raised our kids to be independent and to be individuals, and we wanted this, you know, even though we didn't always like some of their choices, we tried to sit them down and talk with them about those choices. But at the same time, you know, I think we tried to let them be who they were going to be, and not try to turn them into mini-me's. You know, in other words, I didn't want my kids to necessarily be just like me. I want them to be their own people with their own opinions and thoughts. And that's kind of how my folks raised me. And so I think that's an important message for parents, is that there's a fine line in there, and everybody's got to figure their own line out.
Yeah, it's one of the cool, unique things about fatherhood. There's billions of us on the planet, but until you really experience it, you really don't understand it. And it's one of those unique things in life, you know?
Yeah, that's very well said.
Yeah, and also now you went through a divorce, which was highly publicized, and divorces, I mean, they're very hard for any family, no matter what scenario you're in, but yours is scaled up quite a bit because it's in the media, it's in front of millions of people. So what kind of effect did that have on the kids, and what kind of advice could you give to a dad out there, maybe that's just in the beginning process of this whole divorce thing?
Well, I'll kind of start answering that by saying that my advice to other dads getting ready to go is definitely keep the kids out of it. And we did that. We really, you know, we were fortunate. Our kids didn't probe and want to know, you know, the details. They, you know, they knew that their mom and I were, you know, struggling and, you know, moving in different directions, I think. But we didn't drag them in. We very rarely argued in front of them. You know, in fact, I don't think we ever argued really in front of them. I sort of refused to raise my voice and always kept my voice calm and as possible. And you know, we had our serious discussions outside the ears of the kids. And I think they liked it. They appreciated that. And we still respect each other. My ex-wife Amy and I can still get in a room or go to a granddaughter's birthday, or we can still do things together without it being. We try not to let there be tension in the room. I mean, it doesn't always work. It's really much easier to say than to do. But I think we really practice the idea of, hey, the tension is for when the cameras are rolling and we're getting paid for it. The real life, we have to not have that in the room, and we have to, when the cameras aren't rolling, we have to really try to, and that's the camera component to our life has made it extra complicated for what I'm describing. I mean, I think Amy and I had to work really hard to realize, hey, there's no cameras rolling. We don't need to, we can be calm. We can be civil, so making that distinction was an extra layer of difficulty. But getting a divorce, while cameras are following you was indeed very difficult.
Yeah, and it's awesome that you guys are doing it, what's best for the kids. I mean, I think so many parents do make that mistake of dragging them into it and making them a whole part of it. And you mentioned there your granddaughter. What has the experience of becoming a grandfather been like to you in comparison to fatherhood itself?
Well, I don't want to say I'm enjoying grandparenthood more, because I certainly enjoyed being just a father and raising the kids. I do think, though, I was more distracted by work and my ambitions and my, drive businesses and things. So even though, there were times when I thought I was being a great father because I was always at home and attentive, there were times when I was chasing my own, interest and not stopping and saying, for example, one of my kids didn't like to build forts. The three of them loved it. And then the youngest, he just wasn't into forts, And I pushed on that for a few years. And, not only did I try to get him into wrestling, but try to get him into thing. And at some point, you try to encourage your kid to be, one of your kids to be into a certain hobby or sport or whatever. And it's difficult to know when to say, hey, that's enough. Now, let's sit down. What are you interested in? How can I didn't always make those turns quick enough and sharp enough, because I was trying to influence them in a certain direction. With the grandkids, I am super double, triple, quadruple committed to understanding what they like and following them around. So I follow my little grandson around like a little puppy dog, looking for what he puts his hands on, what he wants to do, is whether if he loves to read or color, so I like doing those activities, and I'm not, I like Hot Wheels. I did get him a Hot Wheel track, but I don't pull it out unless he pulls it out, you learn, you get older and you get wiser, and I think that's happened with me, and I'm not going to make the same mistakes with my grandkids as I've made with my own kids. I think that, I'm enjoying is it grandpa-ness? I don't know how you word that, but I'm enjoying it immensely.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Do the kids, do they enjoy the whole process of the show? Have any of them ever spoken out and saying, like, hey, they don't want to be a part of it anymore? Do they watch the show, and do they get any enjoyment out of it, or is it just such a normal part of their life they don't even think twice about it?
Well, I would say everybody in our family has taken their turns loving doing the show and hating during the show, and it's not always at the same time. So the answer to that is all over the map. Right now, though, my youngest dropped out of the show quite a few years ago. He just decided that he did not, like the process of the show and the storylines that were drawn up. And so he, slightly less than gracefully, announced that he was going to, not be part of the show anymore. And we allowed him to do that and said that's fine. And so the show did go on, and he's still very much part of the family. In fact, he lives still in one of our guest quarters there on the farm. We see him every day. People, well, why doesn't anybody ever talk to Jacob? Well, we talk to him every single day. It's just that he doesn't want to be on the camera, so the cameras, he's either off traveling when the cameras are there, or we point him in a different direction than where he is. Often he'll be right in the room with us when the cameras are there, but they just don't feature him, and he's happy with that, and he enjoys it. And then one of my twin boys this last year, him and his wife made the decision that they wanted to pursue other interests, so they asked to pull back out of the show. And I was sort of neutral last year about it. I could have taken it or leaving it, probably more left it. But Zach, my other twin, and his wife, and Jackson and Amy, my ex-wife, were all very interested. They thought they had a lot more they have a lot more stories to tell. So we all decided in the end, or they did really, and I went along with that it was time to go ahead and do some more shows. So that's where the season that's coming out here, April 2nd, it's going to start. So we've been working. People think our show kind of goes away, but really we're behind the scenes working our butts off, for 8 months, making episodes. Almost every day we're filming, or 4 days a week anyway. And now we have a package of episodes that are ready to air here just in April 2nd, on Tuesday night. So they'll run for, 10 or 12 weeks. And then we'll go, probably back to making more. So they'll be off the air for a while. So it's confusing to the viewers because they don't know whether they're watching a rerun or a brand new episode sometime. But everything right now is reruns until April 2nd. And then you're watching brand new content that was started filming, in the summer of last year.
Yeah, I think for most of us, when we watch shows like that, we take it for granted that it all looks like it comes so easily and natural. We don't realize all the work that's going on behind the scenes and what it takes to actually put a show like that together. So, and then plus be a father, a husband, a grandfather, all on top of that. I mean, it's got to wear you down, I would imagine.
I would say you got it. You hit the nail on Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And trying to get, you're right. It's hard enough being a father and a husband without that layer. And so doing reality television, people call me all the time, oh, I want to, be in reality television. It is not for the faint of heart at all. It is very difficult. It plays havoc because you especially in our format, the format that we're in, you don't know it's difficult to know where the lines of, truth are versus made up story stuff, and so, I could say something that's kind of egged on by the producers, and then I have to go to the family and say, hey guys, that's not true. That's not really how I feel. I had to say that to make everything kind of fit together and work, And we as a family work very, very hard to make sure that what we put out is very, very much in line with the truth and what's actually happening. But sometimes the timing is, I recently on the internet got beat up, over like, oh, Matt was faking it. He wasn't really buying a house, And it's like if people could hear the exact explanation, they'd go, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. But the way that the timing of when this episode came out, when this content was filmed, there was no deception, no lies, nothing. It just, the timing was sort of a little bit askew. And there was a perfectly good explanation that shows that there was no, deception involved. But sometimes it just falls together in a way that looks like, there's something going on. So when it's between us family members or between me and my kids, I have to be very good about communicating, going to them and them to me and say, hey, Dad, like recently my kids, Zach and Tori bought a house that had a lot of stairs. I don't like the house with a lot of stairs. So I was very vocal about that, on the television. Then I had to go to them and say, hey, I actually love your house. I don't love the stairs. That's true. But I love your house. I think you guys did a wonderful job because I don't want them to watch the TV and think I hate their home. Anyway, I think you get the idea there.
Yeah, that's another one of those things we don't really consider. But all right, well, listen, the show has been a huge success, and you got another season of it coming out. What type of goals or what plans do you have for the future, maybe beyond the show?
Well, Amy and I, it's depicted on the show. It's a very kind of interesting season that's coming out about the farm and, am I going to buy it from her? Is she going to buy it from me? Are we both going to just go status quo? So we're working on that. So my plans is to get that settled over the next few months. And then once that's settled, I'd love to maybe build a home or a house on there that's custom to me. If it doesn't, if she decides to be the one that buys the farm, then, I might construct a home somewhere else in the Portland area. I'm talking to you today from Arizona. I got a home down here with my girlfriend Karen, and so we spend as much time down here as we can enjoying the warm weather and the sunshine. But I've got all my businesses. I'm looking at doing another book. I've actually already written my second Little Lucy book called Little Lucy Big Bully, which I haven't done the artwork for yet, but I'm working on I really enjoy doing children's books, and giving them a strong message of resilience and overcoming adversity and what have you. So that's a passion of mine that I'd like to continue to pursue. And other than that, I stay busy in my day to day. Everybody said, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, I don't see that me retiring as working out too well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Matt. I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
My biggest advice, first off, everybody's got to find their own way. There's no real perfect guidebook of do it this way or do it that way, but let your kids, be who they're going to be. I mean, you can, obviously you want to discipline them and correct them and teach them manners and please and thank yous and all that. But really at some point you need to let go of trying to control your kids and forcing them to be somebody that they're not, and realize that I have 4 kids. They're all very different personalities, extraordinarily different. They match all 4 corners of the world in terms of their thoughts and their beliefs and their pursuits. And I just have to love them and accept them all for that, and work to switch gears and develop them and realize they each have different needs and different, desires for my time. And I didn't always understand that perfectly, and it's cost me, that relationship that I'm finally, figuring that out and making good by some of those early mistakes. But that's my biggest advice for new dads is let your kids kind of be who they are and develop. If they're interested in video games, then become a video gamer with them. If they're interested in reading, become an avid reader with them. So or soccer or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, very well said. That's great advice. Matt Roloff, this has been a pleasure for me. I got to say thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Well, thank you, Alec. Appreciate it. Good work you're doing, so keep it up.